and the Utilities Commission, and a few housekeeping items. As you think of questions during our presentations, please go ahead and raise your hand, or you can submit your questions using the webinar dashboard that's on your screen to the right. Go ahead and submit those questions. While we're doing those presentations, we're going to split up the Q&A in a couple of places. Tom Bean and I will give updates from the legislative session that just wrapped up. We'll take some Q&A following that presentation, and then we'll turn it over to Michael Hughes, who will give an update on the Utilities Commission, and then we'll take some final questions towards the end of the webinar. So to get started, the 2012 legislative session, which began in mid-May, just adjourned just before the July 4th holiday. It was a short session, given the name, and as legislative leaders had promised going into the session, they really did keep it focused on the budget adjustments primarily, and we had very limited energy issues coming up. One thing I do want to say, right off the bat is a huge thank you to all of you who participated in our 2 lobby days. We had incredible turnout again, unprecedented participation at our 2 lobby days, as well as all of the in-district and other Raleigh meetings that a lot of the NCSEA members and clean energy supporters have been having throughout the year, which has really helped Tom and I in developing stronger relationships with legislators and really getting them more up to speed on what's happening with renewable energy, energy efficiency, smart grid, high-performance building, and electric vehicles all across North Carolina. These meetings and developing relationships is just key to advancing clean energy with elected officials. I can't stress that enough. And I know that I sound like a broken record every time I see you, but it really is vitally important. So several advancements or new things that NCSEA has done on the policy front this year that has also really helped strengthen and deepen our legislative work especially. We held 6 policy roadshow events across the state just before the start of session. I want to thank everybody who attended those events. That was also a great opportunity to get folks up to date on kind of what was to come in the short session, and also gave attendees the opportunity to meet with some of the local legislators who also attended those meetings. We conducted our 2nd public opinion poll, which was a survey of registered voters earlier this year, which again was vitally important and very educational with legislators, so they really could see the public support, the overwhelming public support for clean energy issues. And again, that's vitally important in making the case that clean energy is here and happening in North Carolina, and also it experiences, overwhelming support. Therefore, legislators really should be looking at ways to keep our business opportunities and potential growth going and moving forward come the long session next year. We've also been developing a much more in-depth policy process, which again is having a great impact on both our legislative and our regulatory work. And I just also want to thank all of you for continuing to do the ribbon cutting events, tours of your companies and projects. Those really are great ways to educate legislators about what's happening in and around their districts. And we really encourage you to keep doing that. Tom and I have heard great feedback from legislators who have attended those events. And again, it's a great opportunity to really show them firsthand that it's happening in and around their districts. And one more thing that we're starting this year for FIRST is doing an energy questionnaire that we're sending to all legislative candidates for the General Assembly and all Council of State candidates. That'll be going out next week. So the short session, as I mentioned, adjourned July 3rd. There were kind of continuation of last year in terms of a lot of partisanship and battling between the legislature and the governor. You know, we did see limited discussion on clean energy issues, and currently there are 7 bills left on the governor's desk. Most of them have to either be signed, vetoed by August 2nd. There's still a slight chance that one or more of those bills could be vetoed, and if they are, it would bring legislators back to Raleigh potentially for a special session to consider those vetoes. So that's definitely something that Tom and I are watching very closely, and hopefully they don't come back to Raleigh. So just wanted to give you a recap and kind of updates on the energy-related issues that did come up this year at the legislature. Many of you participated and attended the 2 study committee meetings of the third-party sale of electricity House Committee that met in January and April. Those meetings, there was a great discussion at both committee meetings of the issue, and we've definitely continued since on just the general education of legislators about the issue of third-party financing or third-party sales of electricity, which really would increase consumer and business access to renewable energy projects. We've seen lots of success of that policy happening in the 20-plus other states that have passed that across the country. And it is something that many legislators continue to be interested in. So that's an issue that we'll continue discussing with legislators and talking about with them through the fall and into the long session next year. House Bill 431, which Representative George Cleveland introduced last year and continued to push for action on, which sought to repeal Senate Bill 3, therefore the REPS as well, was an issue that kind of was hanging out there throughout the short session this year. And like I said, Representative Cleveland continued to try to bring it up. But thanks to the great work of Representative Ruth Samuelson and Tom Murray, Senator Neil Hunt over in the Senate, and others, we were able to convince Speaker Tillis to say that no, that would not come up in the short session, and kind of put that issue to rest, at least for the short session. The state budget, House Bill 950, was another bill that Tom and I and a lot of our members worked on in terms of the much needed, vitally important state budget funding for the 3 university energy centers that are, that's the Solar Center at NC State, and then the programs at Appalachian State University and A&T. We were successful in continuing the increased funding that they got in last year's budget. So those programs, although they did receive a cut from 2 years ago, they will be able to maintain that funding, which also is vitally important in drawing down federal funds, matching funds. That's very important. Also included in the budget that's energy related, the Tennessee Valley Authority settlement funds, which a lot of you have been following closely. The state of North Carolina and several others had sued TVA over the last few years, reached a settlement that was primarily dedicated to increasing clean energy or providing grants for clean energy and other projects. So the budget drew down the first 2 installments of that $11.2 million for North Carolina, and the North Carolina Department of Agriculture and North Carolina Biofuel Center will be the 2 organizations that are responsible for setting up a grant program using those funds. So that's something that we'll be providing updates on in the coming weeks and months on exactly how that RFP process will work and the types of projects that the Biofuel Center and Ag will be looking to fund. House Bill 1139, entitled Promote Renewable Jobs. This was the tax credit for electric vehicle R&D and component manufacturing. This was introduced this year, and something that the PEV, Plug-in Electric Vehicle Task Force, was also very interested in. We really didn't expect much action on this bill this year, as did the bill sponsors. So we really used it as a way to kind of start the education and outreach from the electric vehicle industry with legislators. So we had a great initial discussion in the House Commerce Committee about this tax credit, which was happening kind of simultaneously as the budget was making its way through the House and Senate as well. And a great, first step in getting more awareness of the electric vehicle industry that has been growing in North Carolina, aware with legislators. So we do expect that and other potential policy recommendations coming out of the Plug-in Electric Vehicle Task Force that's been meeting all year, additional recommendations coming from that group later this year, which could be considered by legislators next year. And then also House Bill 177, which was the Clean Energy Transportation Act. This was primarily focused on setting up kind of an interagency group to look at alternative fuels for cars and fleet vehicles, things like that. There was also a provision in that that instructed DOT and others to look at an issue that's come up in the last few months regarding electric vehicle charging stations at rest areas. The issue there pertains to the current federal prohibition that basically prohibits anything from being sold at a rest area except vending machines. So that's something that not only is North Carolina looking at, but quite a few other states, because they do see rest areas as a potential spot to put those charging stations at. A local bill, Senate Bill 938, when Senator Goolsbee introduced midway through the session, pertaining to a waste-to-energy landfill project there in New Hanover County. That bill was not moved through committee at all, no action, but NCSEA has been working with Senator Goolsbee and other local elected officials on that project to try to resolve those questions or issues that they have potentially at the Utilities Commission. And then probably the biggest energy-related bill that got the most attention during the short session was Senate Bill 820, the Clean Energy and Economic Security Act, better known as the fracking bill. And I love the fact that they've kind of using our clean energy name. But this really did take kind of center stage with a lot of legislators. And, Tom and I also kind of used this opportunity to really highlight the comparison or differences in the number of jobs that legislators were talking about regarding the potential natural gas fracking opportunities for North Carolina, primarily in kind of the Sanford area south of the Triangle, in comparison to the 15,000 or so jobs that we have in the clean energy industry already in our state. That really is a stark contrast, and hopefully legislators will do more with the clean energy industry and putting policies in place that really continue the job growth, the business opportunities that we have experienced in recent years. One very important component of Senate Bill 820 was the creation of a new Joint Legislative Commission on Energy. And this committee, it won't be appointed until after August 1st. We're still not sure if Senator Berger and Speaker Tillis will make those appointments prior to the start of the long session. That is something that we're watching closely. And the thought is that this Joint Legislative Commission really could kind of become the energy committee where a lot of the key energy bills will start and will be discussed before making its way through the individual House and Senate committee. And I also wanted to kind of remind everyone of, kind of the shift and change in the political environment and kind of the makeup of the General Assembly. Not only did we have a lot of, the political parties shift and other changes that happened after the 2010 election, we're also seeing a very large number of legislators on both sides of the aisle retiring this year. Everyone from, former Speaker Joe Hackney, former Republican Speaker Brubaker just announced recently that he was stepping down, and many others. So you're going to be losing. We'll lose a lot of institutional knowledge and experience legislators retiring this year. So it really is important for us to get to know, the candidates who are running on the November ballot now, and continue developing relationships with the very large class of new legislators that came in, 2 and 4 years ago. And as I mentioned a little while ago, NCSEA has decided to do a clean energy candidate questionnaire that we're sending to all legislative and council of state candidates. All of those responses will be posted on our website as we're receiving them. Because we're a 501c3, we won't be endorsing officially, but we do see this as a way to gauge, initial knowledge and support or opposition of kind of the basic clean energy issues that legislators or statewide elected officials in North Carolina may be facing or asked to make decisions on starting in the long session next year. And again, just to reiterate, the long session, does begin in January, which is just a short 6 months away. We are expecting some fairly substantial attacks that may come in the shape of tax code reform or changes to the REPS, the Renewable Energy and Efficiency Portfolio Standard, come the long session next year. Senator Bob Rucho from Charlotte, who's also the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, has said on multiple occasions over the last year or two that it is his intention to, tackle overall reforms to the tax code, which really has not been updated since the 30s and 40s. So there is, a substantial need to do that, but we don't know yet in what form or how that will be done. Something that legislators have tried to tackle different ways at different times over the last 10, 15, 20 years. But then once they started opening, that can of worms, they realized how controversial, how difficult, how expensive it is to really get into our tax code, and very little changes have come to be over the last couple of decades. Senator Rucho has told us and other business members recently that one of the things that they do plan to do is look at all of the current tax credits, which of course would include our renewable energy investment tax credit and the manufacturing tax credit, and potentially repealing all of those. So that is, protecting, maintaining, and looking at other policy options to continue the growth of the clean energy industry in North Carolina and access to affordable clean energy projects options is definitely one of the top priorities for NCSEA. Also on this slide, one of those strategies that we're looking at is the creation or doing an economic benefits tax credit study on our renewable energy investment tax credits, and really looking at and recruiting different companies and homeowners, individuals who have taken this tax credit over the last couple of years. We really are going to have to do kind of an all-out push to really show Senator Rucho and other legislators looking at these tax code reforms the value and just the enormous economic benefits that come with this tax credit. For every dollar spent on our tax credit, as of last year, you're getting basically a $10 return on the funds that are spent on these types of projects across the state. So we've got a great story and great stats to share, but we really do need to get more people involved, engaged in our legislative work, especially on the tax credit and the REPS, to really make sure all of these legislators hear these success stories and fully understand what these potential policy changes, what a negative impact it could be. And as I mentioned earlier, there may also be efforts to repeal or roll back the REPS, the Renewable Energy and Efficiency Portfolio Standard law, next year. Representative Mike Hager, who's the current co-chair of the House Public Utilities from right outside of Charlotte, has mentioned in the last few months his concern about the set-asides in particular. So that's definitely something kind of on his radar screen as well as our radar screen. And just making sure that we're also sharing the success stories and how well the REPS is working not only for the clean energy companies and consumers across the state, but also, the great job that the utilities have done, which has led them to being, for the most part, far ahead of schedule in complying with REPS. And one thing I really, would like to stress again, as you're developing stronger relationships with your local legislators and the candidates running in November, you really have to start from the beginning, start from scratch, because so many legislators have been elected in the last 2-4 years that they weren't here back in 2007 when the REPS passed or when the tax credits were expanded or passed. So you really do have to start from scratch. Assume a legislator knows nothing, and they'll quickly tell you if they're more up to speed on solar energy but don't know much about energy efficiency or vice versa. Just assume that they know nothing and start the conversation from there. And always make sure you localize whatever issue, whether it's energy or education or whatever the topic may be that you're talking with legislators, because localizing it and showing legislators, one, that you're a constituent that cares about that issue, you live in their district, and when we're talking about clean energy issues, showing them firsthand that you have a solar panels on your roof, or you own a company with so many employees, just telling that local story really does have an impact on legislators. And another area that NCSEA, and especially our outreach staff, has really made a priority is just engaging a wider audience of people. The one good thing that our public opinion poll has shown 2 years in a row now is that renewable energy and energy efficiency has overwhelming support across North Carolina, across all regions, across Democrats, Republicans, independents, age groups, you name it. And we have to tell that success story on why it's important to us. But we also need to be engaging a wider audience, a wider universe of people who may have stronger relationships with legislators, whether it's business owners of non-energy companies, chambers, finance folks, economic developers, educators, and that goes across the range of K through 12 to community colleges to universities and private schools, and local elected officials. We've had I've had the great opportunity to go to several great ribbon cutting events at some of our large scale solar projects over the last 6 months or so, and have just been so impressed with the wide range of local officials that have attended those events. That really shows the legislators who are also in attendance what a wide, range of support clean energy does have. So I wanted to just take a few minutes of questions here before we turn it over to Michael to provide some more updates from the Utilities Commission. So if you have questions, please raise your hand, or you can submit questions via the taskbar on the right-hand screen, on the right-hand side of your screen. So the first question that has been submitted, in March 2011, at the insistence of the utilities, the Energy Policy Council unanimously expressed its strong support for Senate Bill 3, which also included the REPF. While the new legislature may not be as supportive, is there any reason to think that the position of the utilities has changed? So I think the first thing, we have not gotten any word or seen a change in the position of the utilities in support of Senate Bill 3. And I think a lot, as I mentioned earlier, there's such the sheer number of new legislators in the General Assembly now. They weren't here back in 05, 06, into 07 when the REPS and Senate Bill 3 and the other components of that legislation were being considered. So we really are having to, like I mentioned before, really start from scratch and retelling that story of all of the 90-plus stakeholders, the utilities, the involvement with the Utilities Commission in doing the LCAPRA study to start the process. That the utilities and NCFEA, all these various interests were at the table in negotiating and coming up with a comprehensive piece of legislation like Senate Bill 3 that really did create that market opportunity for clean energy. As more legislators are hearing that story, the politics can be taken out of the issue, but again, it's still a lot more work that needs to be done. The next question, can you talk about the possible expanded construction work in progress bill in the 2013 legislative session from William? We, and Tom, feel free to jump in if you want to. At this point, we do not know if the utilities are going to pursue the QIP bill, the new financing for nuclear plants. That was something that was mentioned when Duke and Progress began their efforts to merge last year. But again, that's something that we'll be monitoring very closely, and we'll keep everybody informed.
I just add that we did see before and early last session, we did see arguments made in the media. It seemed like there was public education work being done by the utilities on how the QIP could be beneficial to ratepayers because it would reduce their financing charges or costs. And the case was being made that QIP was worthwhile in its own right, on its own merits. There were a number of groups did organize to oppose that idea, and as the merger became more complicated, it seemed like that sucked the oxygen out of the room and put that on hold. I don't expect that we will see another run at that in the long session after the merger is finalized.
And a question or suggestion that Marilyn Graham asked, there's a need to highlight how the state has attracted industries and investments to the area because of the Renewable Energy Portfolio Standard. I completely agree, and that's definitely a priority of NCFEA in getting our members and other clean energy supporters more engaged in our legislative efforts, as well as the work that we're doing over at the Utilities Commission. You guys are the strongest advocates Tom and I could bring in to meet with a legislator. And again, I can't stress enough how important you are in reaching out to your local legislators in the House and Senate, telling them about sharing your support of clean energy and how important REPS is, how important the tax credit is, how important performance contracting is to local governments, to the universities. That it really is important, not only to producing cleaner energy sources, but also, the thousands of jobs and business opportunities and, that come with it, as well as being able to scale up this industry, which really does have, a direct impact on lowering the cost of energy for consumers.
I think that last part is really critical. Legislators in general and skeptical legislators particularly need to hear not only the success of the priming impact of the tax credit and the REPS, but they need to hear the narrative about how the clean energy sector is maturing, how costs are coming down, and a vision of the future where as the sector scales up, it becomes more and more viable in a unsubsidized competitive marketplace.
Okay, and David Phillips, you've got your hand raised. If you want to go ahead and ask your question, we've unmuted your line.
I just wondered who benefits financially by reducing or repealing the REPS law from 2007, and is there possibly a misplaced or misunderstood perception of utilities' attitudes toward clean energy and the possibility of legislators getting campaign support from those utilities if they support clean energy?
If I understand your question correctly, I'd say it's not clear that there is any direct economic beneficiary of repeal of the REPS. The motivation for the legislators who are interested in repeal or work on set-asides seems to be ideological. Their concern is that they believe that only technologies that are viable in the market are really valid, and that you can't. They seem to think that it's not appropriate for, in the way they characterize it, is they say they don't want government picking winners, and so what you have to demonstrate to them is that, in some sense, you're not winners because government has singled you out for subsidies, but rather because of the inherent long-range potential of technology.
And also, reminding, when I get a question like that from a legislator, one of my, first things that I remind them is, North Carolina has a highly regulated electricity market where, Duke, Progress, your Muni, or Co-op, whichever territory you live in, basically has monopoly control. So in essence, kind of our electricity market and the regulations we already have in place has kind of picked that winner and loser. So, the REPS, the tax credit, some of these other policies, clean energy policies that have been put in place over the last few years really has allowed, very limited competition in our market to give consumers more choices and allow the market to grow. So I want to, those of you who have raised your hands or submitted questions, we're going to hold on to those. I want to turn it over now to Michael Youth, who's our staff counsel and handles most, if not all, of our work over at the Utilities Commission. He's just going to give a quick kind of recap of the bigger issues that we're working on over there, and then we'll take some more questions towards the end of the webinar. Michael?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Julie. As Julie mentioned, I'm Michael Youth, NCSEA's counsel, and as Julie also mentioned, I'm going to give you a recap and preview of some of NCSEA's work at the Utilities Commission. Commission work may not be as glamorous as legislative work, as reflected by the fact that I've got just one slide for you, but our regulatory work is just as important to realizing our collective vision. Our regulatory work, as you'll see on the slide, has 4 focuses: REPS-related work, financing and market development work, work designed to enhance information accessibility, and transmission-related work. As far as the REPS-related work, some of you have probably heard that the electric suppliers in the state, and by that I mean Duke, Progress, Dominion, the munis, and co-ops, have asked to delay their swine and poultry set-aside compliance obligations for 2012 and 2013. We have actively engaged the electric suppliers, as has the North Carolina Pork Council, the North Carolina Poultry Federation, and the North Carolina Farm Bureau. In addition, at least one developer has also engaged the electric suppliers. The electric suppliers are actually filing testimony today in this docket. At the same time, settlement talks are underway, and NCSEA is involved in those talks. If a settlement is not agreed to, or if one or more interveners chooses not to settle, non-settling interveners will file their testimonies on August 8th, and a hearing will be held in this docket on August 28th. Next, with regard to financing and market development, there are really two key dockets of interest. First, as a reminder, we intervened in the Duke Progress merger proceeding. NCSEA in that proceeding advocated for approval of the merger conditioned on creation of a public benefits fund, a third-party sales pilot, and on-bill financing. While the Commission didn't incorporate any of these conditions in its order, it did direct that $2 million be given to NC Green Power, where it will be used to benefit renewables projects. $15 million was also directed to be given to two organizations to make grants for low-income energy efficiency projects and workforce development. However, by way of following up on NCSEA's proposed merger conditions, during the closing days of the merger proceeding, Duke and Progress indicated in a filing that an on-bill financing program should be proposed outside of the merger docket. We honed in on the fact that they did not outright oppose the concept of on-bill financing, and so we are actively pursuing an opportunity to sit down and discuss on-bill financing with Duke and Progress. As far as the post-merger proceedings go that have centered on the CEO change, we are monitoring those proceedings. The Commission appears to have several options. It can do nothing, it can rescind or undo the merger, or it can modify some of the terms and conditions of the merger. We do not expect the merger to be rescinded or undone. Indications in the media are that the Commission might pursue the third option, additional terms and conditions. Beyond the merger and our pursuit of on-bill financing, the avoided cost docket is critical to financing and market development. Many independent power producers are satisfied with the current state of avoided costs. Others might like avoided costs to rise. This autumn, Duke, Progress, and Dominion will file their proposed avoided costs for the next 2 calendar years. With Duke's and Progress's avoided costs historically having been based on the peaker method, and with peakers being natural gas fired in most instances, and natural gas prices being at the lows they are, there's a healthy concern that the utilities' avoided costs will actually go down. We plan to engage in this docket later this year and see if there are options that will enable our currently robust renewables market to maintain its growth trajectory. On the information access front, there are also 2 dockets of interest. First, in the 2011 Integrated Resource Plan docket, we pushed for greater transparency in the utilities' filings. We felt that they were redacting information that shouldn't be redacted. When the Commission issued its order in May, in that docket, it actually required Dominion to review its filing and unredact what it could, and explain why anything redacted merited protection from public disclosure. We were encouraged by this order, which I should mention is echoed in a way in the recent merger-related order that requires the electric suppliers to go through their settlement agreements filed under seal and explain why specific information contained in those agreements are trade secrets entitled to protection from public disclosure. Next, let's talk about Duke's last REPS recovery docket. Duke gets to recover from ratepayers up to $1 million in research costs each year. This research involves topics of interest to all of us, like distributed generation impacts, and solar penetration research. We recently filed a post-hearing brief asking the Commission to direct Duke to file an annual report on this research. The report would include the results of the publicly funded REPS-related research that Duke is conducting. It would also indicate whether the results of the research are publicly available, and if so, how the results can be obtained. We expect an order in this docket in the next month or so. Our final focus area is transmission, and here there is one docket of note right now. The Commission is currently looking at whether third parties are permitted under our state's laws to build out transmission, or whether only the incumbent utilities, Duke, Progress, and Dominion, can build out transmission. The answer to this question could have implications for the build-out of transmission to support wind power in particular. We believe the law currently permits non-incumbent third parties to build out transmission, at least in certain circumstances, and we will be filing comments tomorrow or Friday to this effect. You should all have the sense, I hope, that there's a lot going on at the Commission, and you should know that I haven't covered it all. To keep up with what we're doing at the Commission, please read our e-news for updates, and please contact me or your region's NCSEA outreach team member if you've got an issue you think needs to be addressed at the Commission. With that, I will say thank you and turn it back over to Julie.
Thanks, Michael. For any of you who have specific questions for Michael on the docket, the issues that he just went over, go ahead and raise your hand, or you can submit your question via the webinar dashboard on your screen. I'll just go, I've got a couple more slides I go through real quick, and then we'll open it up again for questions. So first off, our annual industry census, which is basically our jobs and sector report that we do each summer and release it in the fall. We just opened this year's census within the last couple of weeks. So if your company it falls into the renewable energy, energy efficiency, high performance building, smart grid, or electric vehicle sectors, we strongly encourage you to participate, fill out our survey, complete the census, so that we really do have complete and accurate information to share with legislators, elected officials statewide, congressional, you name it. That's one of the most important publications that we release each year, and I just can't stress enough how important it is to get as high of participation as possible and accurate information, which Tom and I use on a regular basis down at the legislature, and our outreach staff, and in numerous ways we use this publication throughout the year. We've got several events coming up now through the end of the year. Our major Making Energy Work conference that we do each fall is going to be in Charlotte this year, October 10th and 11th. We just opened registration online for that. You can also see the initial agenda and other information on our website, so we definitely encourage you to check that out. You can go ahead and register. We also have a lot of sponsorship opportunities as well. It's always a great learning and networking opportunities for you, and also, you know, for you companies that are on the line, a great marketing and visibility opportunity for you as well. We've also got several regional events happening now through the end of the year. our finance forum in Charlotte on August 22nd, and then a couple of networking receptions in the mountains on September 6th, in the Triad September 12th, and then out in Edenton on September 19th. And if you'll go ahead and save the date on your calendar for our holiday party in December. So now I just wanted to open it back up for additional questions. One question that was submitted online was what's the latest updates on the issue of third-party sales? The latest is there were 2 committee meetings of the House Study Committee that met prior to the start of session. The utilities continue to express some concerns about that policy, which we're continuing to have open discussions with the utilities, communities, and co-ops to address their questions and figure out where we agree and what issues still need to be discussed so that we really could come to a policy that works for everyone. As was discussed, especially in the second committee meeting, there's wide support from consumers to businesses to the military. We had a speaker from Fort Bragg. So a policy like third-party sales or third-party financing really can have far-reaching benefits for the state of North Carolina. And one of the biggest benefits that we have is that we have so many states across the country, regulated and unregulated states, that we can look to look at what they've done, the success that they've had, any problems that may have arisen, to make sure that we really do develop a policy that works best for North Carolina and first and foremost, provides another financing option to make clean energy more accessible to consumers, to businesses, to the military, and others who are supportive of that policy. Another question, and Michael, this is probably best suited for you. What are you anticipating for potential utility rate increase filings now through the end of the year and going into 2013?
So the best indication we have is that Progress and Duke will both be filing rate increases later this year. Many of you probably know that Dominion has already filed for a rate increase. Honestly, I don't know how the post-merger proceedings could impact, in particular, Duke's filing for a rate increase. Certainly it could impact it, but at this point the best information I've got is that both of those utilities will be filing base rate increases later this year.
Great, thank you, Michael. And Tom, this question is for both of us. How can businesses or homeowners get more involved in the legislative process in sharing our support for clean energy?
I think the key thing is to try and establish a relationship with legislators and candidates, particularly candidates who haven't served before, are very flattered by early attention. There's an old saying that early money is the best kind of money as far as donations go, and the same applies to personal relationship building. But it's now is the best time to start on anything, and building relationships with legislators in their district, and then following up on those relationships when they come down here. So, for example, Julie was talking about you have a ribbon cutting, the local papers there, so all the local notables want to come out and be seen and have their picture taken to be on the front page of the local paper. Once they've gotten that, you need to follow up with them and, in effect, remind them that they've gotten the benefit of being at your ribbon cutting, and you'd appreciate continuing that dialogue when they're down here. And we have had business members who really do get their the phone calls taken. They get meetings, and they're looked to as a resource by legislators on specific issues, and have been critical on some very specific things like funding the university programs. Senate appropriators heard from business people that they trusted and were key in making sure that the university energy programs didn't see a cut this year.
And this question is probably going to be answered best by Ivan. Ivan, you want to share some comments on the UNC Systems recent forum up at App State?
Sure. Excuse me. I think a huge congratulations should go out to everyone in the university system for coming together, taking time to travel to Boone and convene to identify where the common opportunities and needs are to improve their energy situation across all the campuses, and to more cost effectively focus on and deliver high-impact educational services and results in the system. Energy waste is an obvious opportunity to improve the financial performance of the university and academic performance of the university system. They spent, in NCSEA included, spent 3 days getting down into the weeds, broke into several leadership groups. NCSEA participated, for example, in the Finance and Regulatory Leadership Group. And what was clear by the end of it was that much of what NCSEA has been working on legislatively and thematically is part of our larger vision for how to make energy universally accessible and affordable for all in North Carolina is strongly aligned with what the various university stakeholders and their partners were saying during this event. So I anticipate that NCSEA and the university system will probably find ourselves saying a lot of the same things in the next couple years about what we need in energy policy, regulation, financing options, what we need from the private sector, from industry, and from the partners we all collaborate with on a regular basis.
Thanks, Ivan. That's a great wrap-up. So we're coming to the end of the hour, and I want to be mindful of your schedules because I know how busy you all are. Just another reminder about the events that we've got coming up, and we hope to see all of you very soon. And again, we encourage you to reach out to your legislators. One thing that numerous legislators who participated in our Energy Choices Now policy roadshow events that we did right before the short session began. One thing that the legislators participating in those events really wanted to stress at those meetings and did a great job. They're average people just like all of us, and being a legislator is still considered a part-time job for all of them. So they really do depend on each of us to be the experts on these issues that they're asked to vote on and draft legislation on and make policy for our state. So it's really up to each of us to make sure legislators and the council of state members, statewide officials, as well as local elected officials, really have the facts and the information that they need to make these important decisions. It's up to us to tell them how, share those success stories on how important the renewable energy and efficiency portfolio standard, the tax credit, the various energy efficiency policies, just how important those policies are, not only to the clean energy industry, but also to consumers, and allowing the market to scale up so that clean energy can become more and more accessible and more affordable for us all. And if you have additional questions for me or for Michael or Tom or any of us, please feel free to email us, additional follow-up questions that come to mind. And Amneris will be posting our presentation on our website later today. We'll also be posting our candidates questionnaire and additional information on our website next week once that mailing goes out. So we encourage you to check back often over the next month as we get those candidate responses back, because we will be posting all of their responses on our website as an informational tool to all of you and all voters across our state. And if you see that your local candidates have not responded, please join with us in encouraging them to complete that survey, because that's extremely valuable information that we could gain now as to their knowledge or where they may be on support of clean energy. Again, thank you again for participating in the webinar and sharing some time with us this afternoon. And as always, feel free to contact NCSEA, our staff here in Raleigh, or our regional outreach staff that's spread out across the state as you have questions or want to get more involved in our organization. Thank you. Have a great day.